Hello, dear friends. Today we continue our exploration of the memoirs of a German non-commissioned officer. Don't forget to rate this video and leave your thoughts in the comments. And now, let's begin. October 24th, 1941. We've been in Kalinin since last night. It was a difficult march, but we made it. We are the 1st Infantry Division here, and arrived ahead of the brigade's 2 light groups. We marched up the road, stretching toward this bridgehead like a long arm, without significant cover on either flank. The bridgehead must be held for strategic and propaganda reasons. The road bears the marks of war: broken and abandoned equipment, destroyed and burned houses, huge bomb craters, the remains of unfortunate people and animals. The city is the size of Frankfurt, not counting the outskirts. It is a haphazard jumble, without a plan or distinctive features. It has trams, traffic lights, modern neighborhoods, hospital buildings, and government offices, all intermingled with pitiful wooden shacks and huts. The new houses were situated on a sandy wasteland, without any fencing, save for a wooden palisade. Behind them rose factory buildings in all their ugliness, with warehouses and railroad sidings. However, we drove for a whole hour along asphalt roads, reading whimsical names like culinary above restaurants along the way. We watched as the remaining population hurriedly engaged in looting. The Russians have so far entrenched themselves on the outskirts. 2 days ago, their tanks were still refueling in the city. They have a nasty habit of driving through the streets and simply ramming our vehicles. Because of this, we suffered some regrettable losses. When we entered the city, we found that they had set up their guns on the main road and made us run for our lives. It was a complete circus. Still, this afternoon, 8 out of 16 planes bombing the crowded airfield were shot down. They were flying low and crashed, bursting into flames like matches. Now that we've sent in the tanks, they'll soon clear the way for us. It's a strange life on this island in a foreign country. We've come here ready for anything, no matter how unusual it may be, and nothing will surprise us anymore. For the last quarter of an hour, there has been a flurry of activity in the sector to our right. The 3rd Battery's positions have been knocked out. The line patrol has ceased operations. Outside, a bitter cold reigns. This is a serious war, serious and sobering. It's probably different from what you imagine. It's not that terrible, because for us, there isn't much left that's truly terrible in the things considered terrible. Sometimes we say, let's hope this ends soon. But we can't be sure it will end tomorrow or the day after. So we shrug our shoulders and go about our business. I was standing alone in the house, lit a match, and bedbugs began falling from the ceiling. Hordes of parasites were crawling across the walls and floor. The hearth was completely black with them, a terrifying living carpet. As I stood there quietly, I heard their incessant rustling and shuffling. It's nothing. This no longer phases me. I just marvel and shake my head. November 2nd, 1941, 4 p.m. The Russians attacked all night. It's calmer today. A wet fog has enveloped the trees, and the crows are preening their feathers. Reports say the Russians are planning a major offensive. The calm before the storm. Yesterday, I spent the whole day down at headquarters repairing my boots. By evening, I returned to my position with Franz Wolf. We walked, hands in our pockets, collars unbuttoned, and pipes in our teeth. As we trudged along like this, our belts and all metal parts became covered in ice, and our collars and caps grew stiff with frost. It must have been around 3:30 when the Russians subjected our positions to a carpet bombardment from their damned guns. This carpet covered the hill in front of us with a series of fiercely flaring bursts of fire, running from right to left with 1-second intervals between strikes. A series of terrible explosions. The sky turned red, and Franz said, "Damn it, that was our village again." Since I had nothing else to do, I took the opportunity to visit the radio station at observation post number 3. That meant walking into the fire. When we reached the top of the hill, we began to wonder, was the little house engulfed in flames or not? We looked around at the top, and Franz said, "Here they can always shoot you from the left and the right." No sooner had he finished speaking than we were both sprawled on the ground. We laughed, ducking our heads, because shortly before that Franz had declared he wouldn't do it anymore, since it looked silly. "It's stronger than you. It's instinct," he said, then added, "And over there, they're firing right down the village street." We didn't have to wait long for machine gun fire, and after a few quick crawls, we turned right. Meanwhile, it became clear that it wasn't the little house that had been hit, but the neighboring barn. "Zink's cow was in there. I'll have to tell him about this." We crossed a grassy field, pockmarked in places by numerous explosion craters, and turned onto the village street. On the right, only Wolf's house remained intact. It was a small, neat building, the commissar's office, with a clean ceiling and whitewashed rafters, a table, and a white Dutch stove. And of course, no vermin. No one lived here. Zink was lying on the rug in front of the radio equipment, an exotic sight in the dim light of an oil lamp. He really did have something to tell us. The barn caught fire after the very first volley at 12:30 that day. Zink was milking the cow. "The explosion threw me into the hay. After a while, I got up. I looked at the cow, and the cow looked at me. Then the fire started. I untied the cow and led her to a safe place. After that, I didn't go out all day. Once was enough." In the evenings, we talked about serious things, our situation, sharing our experiences of what we'd been through, changes in our personalities, our work before the war, and what we'd do afterward, what would become of us, of Russia, and of Germany. Then there were jokes, because the guys from the motorized infantry called us the Hungry Division. We were always in a bind, without a supply train, like street urchins. We don't get new army boots or shirts when the old ones wear out. We wear Russian trousers and Russian shirts, and when our shoes become unusable, we wear Russian boots and footcloths, or even make earmuffs out of those footcloths to protect against the cold. But we have our rifles and the bare minimum of ammunition. "No, just look who's here," say the guys from the motorized infantry. But we have an answer. "Our general has nerves of steel," we say. Like it or not, this country feeds us. It's been snowing again since 5 in the morning. The wind blows fine, dry snowflakes into every crack. The infantrymen protect themselves from the cold with whatever they can: fur gloves, woolen hats, earmuffs made from Russian footcloths, and cotton-padded pants. We occasionally stick our noses outside and run back to the stove. Poor soldiers from the rifle companies, sitting in dugouts and trenches. They have no suitable position for combat operations. They are not trained for this, and we have not dug out suitable dugouts, even though we are stuck here for a while. We did not expect to linger. We need to move forward. The snow is falling heavily and silently. The blizzard has died down now. It muffles sounds and blinds the eyes. Isolated shots ringing out from the surreal gray mist sound hollow. You don't even know why they're firing. Abandoned horses, stallions, and old geldings trudge through the snow at a trot, heads hanging low, emerging from the mist and disappearing alone. As we walked across the plain shrouded in the night's veil, the wind blew snowflakes down our necks, and we barely spoke. Once, Franz said, "This is a land forgotten by God." Then, at the crossroads, we parted ways. As we shook hands, we paused for a moment, and Franz's stooped figure quickly vanished into the darkness. There are moments when a certain image becomes etched in your mind. This was one of those moments. Taking one last look at the friend I had just parted with, I felt detached from the event in which I had been participating. We never know where we're going, even if we usually laugh at such thoughts. I have a greatcoat again. We've lost Antiman. We're one good comrade short. The greatcoat is old, having survived 2 campaigns, with a greasy collar and pockets that have lost their shape. Just right for Russia, for someone who wants to shove his hands deep into his pockets while puffing on a pipe. A very fitting posture for someone who wants to create a sort of vacuum around himself, because each of us has become almost indifferent to everything. Personally, I feel wonderful in this state. I find pleasure in hardening myself against all these hardships, mobilizing my strength and clear-headedness against this dog's life, so that in the end I might perhaps benefit from it. There are now 28 men in this room, plus 4 women and a child. The hosts sometimes sleep in the kitchen next door, sometimes here, on the stove. My own sleeping spot is by the door, in the passageway. Since we have a battery-powered radio, people even come to visit us in the evening. This creates quite a problem with the passageway. It's hard to turn around. When most of them go to bed, I sit down to write, and sometimes we play a game of chess, while others take off their shirts for a nighttime hunt for lice. That's when the infantrymen strike up a conversation. Real infantry soldiers, like machine gunners or the guys from the rifle company. It's hard to describe this kind of evening conversation. There's so much in the very atmosphere of this conversation, in the way people sit, with their elbows on their knees, or leaning back with their arms bent. Of course, we get depressed sometimes, but it's not worth talking about, because the best in us comes out through humor. For example, we pull out a map and say, "Now as soon as we get to Kazan," or, "Does anyone know where Asia is?" Today someone said, "We'll be home for Christmas." He didn't say which year, another interjected with a smirk. Imagine, you get home and the first thing you hear is that they're drafting you into the militia. You get up at 5 in the morning on Sunday and someone's standing there shouting, "Machine gun fire on the left," or "Russian infantry 200 meters beyond the village." What do? You tell them you're going into the village to catch a couple of chickens for roasting, says Franz. What else? And Zink adds, "If anyone wants to talk to me, I'll ask them if they've been to Russia." Although Kalinin had been captured, the offensive on the main axis toward Moscow had been halted, bogged down in the mud and forests just about 100 kilometers from the capital. Following a new attempt to reach Moscow on December 2nd, which resulted in German troops effectively reaching the suburbs, the Russians launched their first major counteroffensive. Within a few days, the 9th and 4th Panzer Armies were pushed far back, and Kalinin had to be abandoned. January 1st, 1942. Happy New Year to all of you. We left the burning village at night, and everywhere we passed, tongues of flame shot up into the sky, followed by black clouds of smoke. Right now, all the guys are asleep. I went outside just to wish my sentries a Happy New Year. "Maybe we'll be home before the year is out," I said. On the morning of the 1st, it was still over 40 degrees below zero. We wrapped rags around our boots and kept glancing at each other's toes. When the tip of your nose turns white, it's time to do something about it. Franz and I were riding with the advance group. Franz couldn't get his foot into the stirrup because of the rags wrapped around his boots. He took out his gloves to untie the wire that held the rags in place. 2 of his fingers were frostbitten. Some of us had frostbite on our feet, a few even 3rd-degree frostbite. The Russians are pressing forward desperately. They're trying at all costs to capture the village intact and unscathed, but we're not leaving a single one to them. On January 9th, we rode out to look for quarters for the soldiers of our supply echelon. It was already dark. The narrow road track was visible only thanks to the fallen trees trampled into the snow. We trotted on for about 4 kilometers. The horses kept sinking up to their bellies in the snow, jumping out and struggling to move forward. It was like riding camels. We swayed and balanced, trying to shift our weight from the horse's withers to its hindquarters, helping it move forward as best we could. It was a strange cavalcade. 3 scarecrows among the bushes and hills. Behind us, the sky turned red again. From time to time, artillery and rifle fire rang out. Otherwise, it was very quiet. An icy wind was blowing. Since last night, it had been sweeping the snow outside the city into swaths and tearing it to shreds. The bridge was buried in snow. Snow dunes covered all the paths, and deep drifts had formed on the roads. Now we are waiting for our men. They must approach after covering 30 kilometers. Will they be able to do it? 8 p.m. Now they won't be able to do it. It's been dark for several hours already. We had dinner at 4:30. We looked at the clock and shook our heads. It's still so early, yet night fell some time ago. Snow is falling thick and fast. Ice crystals are like thin needles that the wind blows into every crack. The light on the other side of the village street glows dimly, and if you dare step outside, the wind will ruffle your clothes. Better to sit by the fire. Thank God for potatoes. We weren't prepared for a long stay in these parts, and what would have become of us without them? How could the entire army survive the Russian winter without this humble vegetable? In the evening, as always, we peeled the potatoes, mashed them reverently, and seasoned them with coarse Russian salt. It is morning now. We have finished breakfast, and once again it was potatoes that gave us a sense of satisfaction from the meal. In this house, we were offered potatoes, tea, and a loaf of bread made from rye and barley flour with added onions. There were probably a few brown cockroaches in it. At least, I cut one of them out without saying a word. The saint in the corner gazes meekly from his golden frame, as if to say that an impassive spirit pays no attention to such trifles. What good is there in noticing them? It can only prevent me from enjoying the splendor of creation, which appeared anew this morning in all its glory. The first ray of sunlight was a line of green and red fire stretching into the sky. Then, a strange light appeared in the northeast. Its center looked like molten metal and was framed by 2 arcs of such blinding radiance that it hurt the eyes to look at it. Everything around us was bathed in a magical golden white haze. The trees and bushes were enveloped in a radiant glow, and in the distance, the rooftops and hilltops shone with white light against the backdrop of a soft gray horizon. At dawn, the sounds spread strangely, mesmerizing and elusive, as if it were all a magical fairy tale. We rode back in the bright sunlight. It was the last time I rode with Franz Wolf and my old comrades. I had been transferred to the battery. The signalman is dead. Long live the artilleryman. The Ivans have woken up. We pushed them back extremely hard. Now they have repelled the attack and gone on the offensive. Last night, we scared off 3 reconnaissance groups in the battalion's sector. The last one consisted of 20 men. Only one of them fell behind the barbed wire on our side. As for the rest, by morning there were many small mounds along the strip, piled up over the bodies of the dead along the neutral zone. One of them was still smoldering. He probably had a bottle of incendiary mixture, and one of our tracer bullets hit it. During the night, the Russians came with a flamethrower. Ivan is now using quite a lot of powerful explosives. In the cold, the roar of the explosions is extremely loud. The shrapnel makes a piercing, sharp, whistling sound, but the effect isn't very great. We're too well protected. The shells from our heavy mortars inflict much greater damage on Ivan. They bounce off the ground and explode in the air. This achieves much greater destructive power through the ricochet effect of the artillery shell, against which no trench can provide protection. When our shutkas drop their payload, the ground shakes for a kilometer around. In one of the companies, they are setting up a trench mortar, which they plan to use to bombard the enemy's trenches with disc mines from a distance of 30 to 40 meters. The mortar's design resembles a Roman catapult. It is very primitive. Such a weapon is a product of trench warfare. When the front starts moving forward again, these contraptions are quickly forgotten. But this game with Roman toys speaks to the unit's fighting spirit. The day before yesterday, I fired a gun for the first time. 10 rounds. It was an amazing feeling. You forget everything. The danger, the cold. It's a duel. In fact, we weren't in any danger. Everything went just like at the firing range. Our first shell struck near a dugout with soldiers, which we had been watching all day. We fired at 2 other dugouts. At the third, a fountain of earth shot up, like a mine explosion. That was our farewell shot. After that, we withdrew to Point C, where we had been stationed some time ago. From here, we must move to pre-prepared positions. Yesterday, I went to visit the old crew. Franz was finally awarded the Iron Cross First Class. The citation reads, "For pursuing an enemy tank from Point C to the next village and attempting to knock it out with an anti-tank rifle." We laughed until tears rolled down our cheeks. For that, among all his other merits. While he had already received a severe reprimand. Still, I was glad. I arrived just as the squad was lining up for roll call. "We miss you," Franz said later. "We're a little shy of sentimentality, but there's something to it. Old brothers. It's a whole world. Isn't that right, Dad?" That's all for today. If you liked the video, please support it with a like and subscribe to the channel. Bye for now, everyone, until we meet again.